The elections at Cape Coast, the youth elections, I made some observations. You know, we had some level of chaos or violence at the place. I think the videos played out a lot on social media, yeah? And it brings to mind the conversation about the use of violence in addressing conflict in politics. When the Ayawaso issue came up, when you listen to the conversation that ensued, the impression was created that it is only in the MPP that you usually would witness the application of violence in trying to settle issues. And I'm one of those guys who said that, look, let's have an honest conversation about how we address conflicts in politics. And that, to be frank, when you look at both sides, there are occasions when or where some of our supporters, instead of using lay-down channels, try to address their misgivings through violence. And what I saw in Cape Coast is a reminder that sometimes we have to be dispassionate and see how we can encourage our followers or supporters to be careful about the means they use in addressing conflicts or disagreements. And so, in short, I'm trying to say that in the NDC, they are faithfuls. You have people who don't mind to put their lives on the line, who don't mind to maim others just to get their way through. And that should teach us that we have a good work, we have a big job at hand. We have to find ways to train and educate our followers. That is absolutely important. There's one observation that I made that is very, very interesting. The opposing factions who were virtually fighting at a point were talking to each other and mentioning names. If you watch the video critically, they knew each other. The point I'm making is that sometimes the battles we engage in, we end up coming from either the same neighborhood or we are actually family. Both sides at Cape Coast. There was a time when one was throwing a chair at the other and the guy was talking to him, mentioning his name. I'm like, wow, this should remind us that be careful in starting a fight because the one you are hitting might be right in your family. And these are lessons that we have to take very seriously. The one at the sports stadium, Accra Sports Stadium, was opposite. Very well conducted, very civil, and I would like to, just as I spoke about the issues with the first one, let me now congratulate them for the second one. And there was one commentary which came out, very significant commentary from Nukbenu, that they had a meeting with the police and told the police that these are the laid down rules for this Congress. Please, you are absolutely in charge. Even if Nukbenu comes to you or the chairperson or whoever, don't go by anybody's instructions. And that largely accounted for the peaceful nature of the process. What are the lessons to take from this? It means that during the national elections as well, we ought to, all of us as politicians, ought to allow the police to take charge and not have political actors coming around, sometimes in war apparel. The host, you know, there are political actors, they only wear war apparel during elections with some fake talisman. Very, very important. Now, one issue that came up prior to the elections at the stadium, sports stadium, had to do with the voice of Asiedu Nketia, the former General Secretary, who is now the chairperson for the National Democratic Congress. He made two statements, very, very significant statements. That one, at the time they actually went to court, before going to court, they virtually had nothing to stand on. That they even went to lawyer Chikata. And the learned man told them that what you have is hollow. Your case is very feeble. In fact, almost non-existent. But what did we see? It didn't stop them from going to the Supreme Court. They still went to the court. Again, Asiedu Nketia said something that by the time they apparently collected about 5-6 constituencies, their system crashed. indicating some weakness in their capacity when it came to managing the electoral process from their end. Yet, what they played outside to the Ghanaian public is that this is an election that we've won comfortably, is the Electoral Commission, Jim Mensah and a team that are very weak and, incompetent and all that. And guess what? Some of their followers, some NDC faithfuls, who genuinely love the party, actually believe some of this commentary, went out there, put their lives on the line. When Asiedu Nketia engaged in an honest, frank conversation, these were the things he said. But when he came out in the public, he said, he talked differently. For me, there is a takeaway. The takeaway is that the chairperson of the National Democratic Congress is a man that is a Jekyll and Hyde. You know Jekyll and Hyde? You didn't go to a Dadabi school.
You have to explain that.
Although I was in a public school, I'm garrison school, field engineers. I had friends who went to Soul Clinic and the others. So they told me about Jekyll and Hyde. I didn't read. We didn't get the books. But a Jekyll and Hyde only tells you that you have one character who has two faces. Depending on the environment, he or she will talk differently. And please, integrity is very fundamental in politics. You, the voter or the citizen, must be interested what is in the integrity of the individual. And it's a takeaway that is very important. Ghanaians must know that it's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. The Supreme Court. How many months were we in court? This one, the recent one. I think it was about 4 months or more. It means those 4 months, we literally were wasting time, resources, energy, and everything. Because those who took the matter to court themselves knew in their heart that there was no case. In fact, I told most of my friends, you know, the psychology we did help sometimes. I told most of my friends that, look, the NDC was not in court for a toppling of the verdict. They were in court to appease their supporters, give them some hope, so that they'll still be in a good mood for 2024. And that is the only thing they more or less achieved at the Supreme Court. What also is good for us to take home is that the verdict of the court is a confirmation of what Asiedu Nketia said. No wonder it was 7-0. It was like nailed to a figure, unlike what happened in 2012 when we went to court. Now, unfortunately, the flag bearer for the NDC on numerous occasions took on the judiciary for having that 7-0. Meanwhile, this 7-0 was prophesied way back by Asiedu Nketia through this conversation. My brother. So, I like honest conversations. You realize that we as citizens should be careful when we are listening to politicians. Because sometimes what they are saying is only out of a desire for power. Okay? And these are honest conversations. Now, there are two things I want to mention which will help the whole country when it comes to national elections and parliamentary elections. And then I'll conclude on that and then go to the press conference.